All right, guys, welcome back to part two of the NZ8 Grand Adventure set review. I am back with Nick again, and today we're going to cover the second half of the set. We covered the styled and freestyle cards in the first half. Now we're going to cover everything else, the personalities, and then anything that's not just freestyle or styled. So there's still another 20 or so cards to go here, so we're just going to get right into it. Up first, we've got Pansy Sensei. Now, this is the first set where NZ has made senseis, so we're kind of excited to see how these impact the game, but we're really happy with where all four of these ended up. I hope you guys end up that way too. Pansy here has 14 slots, the most slots of a sensei with an effect in the game, and this effect is twice per game, stops a physical or energy attack. When we spoiled this card, Zach made a joke that it's pretty funny that in the 8th set of NZ, we can print a card with 9 words on it that it turns out to be great. But this card is awesome. So North Kai is kind of the de facto go-to sensei for just like a lot of people. But there are some decks that I play it, but really probably shouldn't, because it's such a common one to pick. People pick it even in times they should have probably picked something else. But with North Kai, it turns off your opponent's mastery 2 times a game. So you really want to be like an aggressive deck that's entering combat and taking full advantage of that. But if you're not the most aggressive deck, or you sometimes pass, sometimes enter, you're just playing kind of the back and forth game, that's not quite the best choice. And so Pansy sort of exists to fill that that niche for that type of deck, where North Kai will go as the high sensei deck count for kind of aggressive decks. Pansy will be the other way, where you get the high count, but you're more defensive. You're not entering combat a ton. You're setting up. You're more responsive. And having 2 blocks a game that you don't have to draw is really good. I think it's going to be really interesting to see like how players manage having 2 blocks, that like 2 expendable blocks. We've seen, in testing, like we tried just like rush using both of them right away and, prolonging the game a little bit. We've tried like clutching them till way late. But I think it's really going to come down to honestly, I think it's going to come down to like player skill, picking like the right moment to stop a really opportune, if successful, effect, or like a really important amount of damage. If you're playing a ball deck and they've got the one attack that's finally going to take a ball, stuff like that, it's going to be really nice to have these handy. In testing, this sensei has felt so good. It's been so fun to use. It's felt like it does a really good job of helping reduce the number of those like blowout games, especially if you use it in really opportune times. I think I expect everyone's going to love this sensei, and I'm curious to see like just how much play it gets.
Yeah, so the overall conversation with senseis is something we should delve more into at a later date. But the one thing that this sensei really has going for it is that every sensei that exists for a specific archetype, for a specific kind of deck. Like you're not going to play South Kai Sensei, go search for an ally once per game in every deck, right? Like most senseis have their concept, their niche, where they fit in, where they are strong, where they make sense. If what Pansy Sensei does is if your deck does not have one of those spots and it does not have a sensei that screams at you as the choice, this is a great default answer. So I think that this will be of the senseis, we're adding to the game this time. I think this will be the most played because its floor is the highest. Every deck needs to stop attacks, right? So like if your deck does not need any of the things that North Kai or West Kai or South Kai or Goku Sensei present to you, Pansy Sensei is a good choice for that. If you are stuck and you can't figure out which sensei to choose, this is the one I would default to. I think Pansy's going to see a lot of play. I think the if successful stopping of it is one of the best things it can do. Now, note that it does not stop focused attacks, so you need to be careful of that. You need to be cognizant of that. You're not going to stop your opponent's prep crash from hitting your discard pile. So you need to be cognizant of what cards in your opponent's deck can have good if successfuls and which ones need to be stopped. I do think that this card has both the highest and lowest skill levels of all of the senseis, because using it correctly is going to be very difficult. But on its on its floor, just having 2 blocks is just fine. So I expect this to be all over the tables. This is a good sensei, and like I said, if your deck doesn't like clamor for one specific sensei, this is a good choice. All right, moving on to our next sensei, and this one is very, very direct and specific. This is Haiba's sensei. His sensei count is 4, which is not very high. His parenthetical says you cannot gain anger nor modify the amount of anger gained via the effects of your mastery card or win by MPPV. Once per combat during your attack or attacks phase, raise your anger 2 levels. So, a lot to take in here. Most people here are familiar with the Red Trunk Saga Mastery, which is once per combat, raise your anger 2 levels if everything goes well. And that mastery usually leads to MPPV strategies. So, obviously, combined with this, that mastery would gain a massive amount of anger. That is not allowed. So that you cannot play this master or this sensei with any mastery that gains or modifies you anger. So no Red Trunk Saga, no Unstable, no Saiyan Buu Saga, anything that talks about anger, Blue Enlightened, that gains you anger, anything like that, you cannot play this sensei with. This is for decks that don't really gain anger on their own. Um, so a couple of the places in testing that we've really been liking this card is things like generic Saiyan decks, because generic Saiyan decks just draw a bunch of cards. The Namekian decks that are based around the Cell Saga Mastery with Namekian Insult, using that as a way to gain anger, and Rage Drill, using that as a way to gain anger. Plus, this can actually help you level up pretty fairly well. And then just anything that has a little bit of anger but not a ton of anger. This has been great in any kind of deck that wants to level that's not all in on the leveling. MPs like Zarbon really like this effect. Because that way you can keep leveling up. Zarbon's really good at defending himself if he gets to level 2, level 3, because when he hits 0, he'll de-level, get more stages, he can throw more attacks. All his attacks raise anger. So what Hibis is going to create is a lot of decks that might have played Goku Sensei because there's not really anything else that worked for them, will just like this better. This is helping the styles in the decks that could not gain anger. Um, Sometimes there will be some confusion about if you want this versus Goku, but I think most of the time it's pretty clear. If you're in the red package, you're going to be on Goku because you can't play Hibis. But if you're playing Saiyan or Namekian, a lot of times you're going to be on Hibis. Um, the one thing to be cognizant of is with the insurgence of the red Sensei deck hate, there is some fear of, this 4 is not very many, right? So you don't want to get aerial force to death or anything like that. Also, recommendations that we learned in testing very quickly is if you have your invited in the Cyber Sensei and you're playing against a red deck, you probably don't want to put it on the table.
Don't do it.
So, uh,
Not worth it.
Hibis is super interesting. We think it's going to gain a lot of anger. Obviously, it'll see a lot of tough enough play since you can't win by MPPV, but it's reasonable to play in standard too, as long as the deck you're trying to play gains anger, but not at a rate that not with the help of a mastery.
And one thing I want to like, Nick says you can't play this with those masteries, and like most of the time you shouldn't. But it's not necessarily that you can't. It's just that those effects won't do anything. So like one specific spot where that feels like actually kind of cool is if you play this in Calamity, and then like you now can no longer gain the anger from that part of the mastery, but you still get like the rest of the stuff that it does. You can have this like sort of forced camp 1 deck in a Calamity deck, which is kind of a cool gimmick. Same thing with like, I guess, Enlightened. You couldn't gain anger off of it, but then you wouldn't be playing it. So like there are times where like the mastery, if you have a mastery that could gain anger, but does something else too, you could play Hibis to not gain the anger, but just sort of like permanently get the other part of the thing. That's not going to come up very often, but the one that like really did shine a little bit when we were talking about it and testing it out was the interaction with Calamity. And then one thing I want to mention with the parenthetical, just because the text, the like language is a little bit or could be a little bit confusing. So you can't gain anger, so you can't use, Red Trunk Saga, stuff like that. You also can't modify the amount of anger gained because of your mastery. So there's Nick, you help me. I'm going to get this wrong. Is it Red Cell Saga or Red World Games?
Uh, what,
One of them makes your other cards get anger.
neither of those do that.
Isn't All right? Well, I'm messing that up. There's a mastery that does that, isn't there?
I mean,
Isn't
talking
that
about unstable?
God? I sure am. It's too early in the morning. So there, unstable says that your other cards gain anger. So it's not like the mastery gaining the anger. But so what this is saying is that you cannot modify the amount of anger that your other cards gain to because of your mastery. So that there's no like semantics of like, oh no, the mastery's not gaining the anger, my cards are. You can't get anger because of your mastery on those cards either. So just
Yeah.
anytime that the easiest way to think about Hybris is if your mastery like applies anger in any way, it just doesn't. That's just the easiest way to think about him.
Yeah, saying Boot Saga Mastery does the same thing. It
Oh
gives
yeah,
your
yep,
cards the ability to gain anger, but that also does not work here. So
yes. Okay, so Sensei 3 Degasu. He has 12 slots. Your opponent must reach level 5 to win by MPPV and cannot win by Dragon Ball victory until the start of their next turn. So there's a couple bits here. One, they have to reach level 5 to win by MPPV, means that your like 1 through 3 decks are now, much safer to play in standard because you're not going to get cheesed out. Funnily enough, though, it says your opponent must reach. So if your opponent is playing a 1 through 3 and you're playing a 1 through 3, they have to reach 5 to win by MPPV, but you don't. So if you have a deck that could, well, you still can. That's a pretty cool little interaction. And then the second part, your opponent cannot win by Dragon Ball victory until the start of their next turn. This is kind of like Where There's Life, There's Hope, where it just delays that win con until the next turn where you just sort of check again. But it's a little bit closer actually to like the Dragon Ball capture victory rule, where when you like capture a ball to win during combat, you have to wait till the start of the next your next turn to win. This works that way. So it doesn't unlike Where There's Life, There's Hope, where you like recheck win conditions or whatever again. You don't necessarily do that here because then you'd like recheck the win condition. Oh, they won by ball victory, and then this would like set it to next turn they can't. So they would like infinitely not win by Dragon Ball victory. So it doesn't quite do it that way. It just postpones it. So as long as they still have all the balls by the start of their next turn, they'll have their ball victory. So what it does is it just gives, if they're going to set the ball down in their non-combat step, and that's like, oh, that's game. Well, now they have to survive through your turn and then into the start of their turn to win. Gives you one more chance to do something about it. If they capture a ball during combat and they'd have to wait to the start of their next turn, obviously that's just like true anyway. So this would, I mean, both this effect and that one would kind of apply, and they would just sort of cancel each other out because they both require you to just win at the start of your next turn. So the easiest way to think about Degetsu Sensei is he just has the Dragon Ball capture rule on all the time. I think this sensei is very, very cool. I think overall of the 4 senseis that exist, he'll probably be the most niche. I think the Hybris one is going to be like the Hybris one in testing was really, really fun to turn on some anger strategies. Pansy, obviously, as we gushed about, was fantastic for just kind of everyone. And the next sensei we're going to get into too has like a very real world sort of applicable purpose. Where Degasu is fitting to his character, very conniving and like just messing with you and making it hard for you to win. So he slows down your opponent's MPPV and slows down their Dragon Ball victory, just giving you more time to play the game and respond to other win conditions. It's a little bit tough to gauge that because and some people just don't like some people when they build a deck, they don't want to play cards that are like reactive to. They want just cards that are like pushing their own strategy. They don't want to like wait for you to do something. And Degasu is kind of that kind of card where it doesn't like further your own strategy specifically. It just protects you from other ones. So I think the decks that will want Degatsu Sensei will really like it, and especially if you're like a 1 through 3 or even a 1 through 4, uh, it'll feel really good to have access to that kind of protection. But I think it's Degatsu. I think will be more of those kind of like meta read type senseis, where just same way like West Kai. Maybe you won't play. Maybe you normally play North Kai, but like if you're going into the next little meta and you're expecting, everyone's kind of on a drill kick or whatever, like you might play West Kai. I think Degatsu will be a similar thing. Like if you're feeling like MPPV has been around a lot, or we get in like a spurt of ball victory decks or whatever, you might be like, it's time for Degatsu Sensei to give me a little bit of cushion. Um, so I think he'll be uh, the most unique of the situations in which you'll want him, as opposed to the other three that are like Nick said, kind of like for specific decks. Degasu's really the only deck he is like specifically for is trying to play a standard 1 through 3 deck. But because of that, 12 slots is still a ton of slots on a deck. It's just a touch lower than North Kai. One of the things, as you'll notice, that we were doing here is we were trying to give all these senseis a number that hasn't been used. So that was a fun little challenge that we went through too. But I think this is like a solid sensei deck count for two strong sort of like win con control options. And I don't know. I think Degatsu is going to be really neat.
Yeah, the 12 sensei deck slots is really important with Degasu because you're gonna be senseiing a lot with this MP, this personality. I know that there's some, there could be some spots where maybe this turns into a way to protect Roshi Speedball or something like that. I don't actually think that that's ideal. I think that Piccolo Sensei is still probably better at that, but it is an option that you have. Like Derek said with Degasu, it's going to be about the 1 to 3s being played in standard. There's been a lot of talk in the league lately about what a standard only card would look like. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a standard only card. It does literally nothing in Tough Enough, but the effect is really strong. I for one hate playing 1 to 3 personalities in standard. Um, I will, for instance, I am fairly well known for playing a Pui Pui deck. I will be using Degasu Sensei in that deck going forward. Because getting cheesed by Oob and some things like that, like I have in recent events, is no fun. So this sensei it's gonna be specific. It's got its niche. Derek is right that there'll be some meta calls with it, but most of the time, like you're gonna look at a 1 to 3 deck that maybe can play in standard. Maybe it's got a little bit of anger. Maybe it's got no anger at all. And this is just going to be a way to protect yourself from getting cheesed out. I do think that there's a lot of 1 to 4 MPPV decks that are good right now. So using this as a way to stop those decks from beating you is very good, no matter how many levels you have. So maybe if you're not very good against anger decks, this is a good counter to that. That way you don't get beat by a 1 to 4 or 1 to 3, deck like that. But overall, this has been fun in testing. It's very straightforward and very simple, and it does one thing and it does the thing real well. So I expect that people will try this more often than we might think. It's just good MPPV protection. The Dragon Ball victory's on there. It's a little cute, but giving you one more shot. Hey, you can always take one more shot at a Dragon Ball deck. So.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
So our next sensei up, last one is Marba Sensei. Sensei spots 8, and it is twice per game during your attack or attacks phase. You may remove up to 5 cards from any player's discard pile, divided as you choose from the game. So as NZ evolves, the discard pile has become one of the most important zones in the game. Between transform and there's various drills that get cards back from the discard pile. Some MPs who care about the discard pile, like a Yamcha, have taken off in popularity. So this has a lot of value in just answering discard pile. If you are a deck or an MP or a strategy that has no answers for discard pile stuff, Marba Sensei is a decent choice for that. Um, the other thing, of course, the most notable thing with this is its interactions with Calamity Mastery. I'm sure that we will put out some, clarifying rules about how this works. But generally, how this works is if you use this to mill your opponent with Calamity Mastery, you don't get to remove any cards from any discard pile.
Yep.
Um, what Marba Sensei is really cool is some of the manipulation for your own discard pile for your cards that care about those effects. So if you are, if you're playing Vegeta's Quickness Drill and some things like that, you get that in play. You can set a lot of that up. Another MP that I played with this a ton in testing was Goldo, for obvious reasons. You can set up, when Goldo's going to be clear with his power, you can set up the two cards you want to draw and get a lot of value out of Goldo from this sensei. So again, it's specific, it's niche. Like all senseis are, or most senseis are, they go in the decks they go in. This sensei is going to see a lot of play in Calamity. It's going to see a lot of play in anything that can maneuver around its discard pile and that can get value from its own discard pile. And if your deck's just not good at answering the discard pile, getting rid of your opponent's blue colossal throws and black ore eruptions, I mean, that's good stuff. Red obviously just got their own transform block in the set, so did Namekian. The only style that's not heavy into the discard pile is Saiyan, and it does have a physical block that's a transform card, which is quite good. So, overall, yeah, I think that it's going to be clear most of the time when you want this. If you're using your own discard pile to your advantage, or if you're on Calamity or something like that, this is going to be a choice that you're going to be interested in.
Yeah, I think the one bit that I'll add to that is the sort of divided as you choose part, just for clarity. You can you can pick 5 cards total between both discard piles. So I could take 3 out of Nick's and 2 out of mine, or 1 and 4, whatever, or 5 out of his, 0 out of mine. However you want to do it, but you can hit 5 cards total between the two piles. You don't have to pick one pile and do 5. So that's, like Nick said, it's really fun to use this and rip the 2 transform cards out of their discard pile, and then sort of tweak the bottom of your discard pile so that your next couple Vegeta's Quickness Drills kick off really well, or making the top card of your discard pile red for Trunk Saga, or it works obviously really well with Arinsu, who cares about the cards in her discard pile too. So you can help kind of use her own power to remove cards out of the discard pile, and then use this to tweak the remaining cards so that you can kind of hit the best targets there. There's just a lot of things that you can do with it, even with your own discard pile, that aren't just rip 10 cards out of your opponent's discard pile over the course of the game. But even if that's all you do with it, it's been very, very effective at doing so, and it's been really fun to use. I'm glad that Nick brought up the Calamity thing. That's a question that I know will come up, and yeah, it's just Calamity is just a straight replacement effect. So if you want to have them mill, you have replaced the entire discard pile touch effect. There's no double dip in there. Overall, I think Marba Sensei is really, really cool. I think the 8 slot is the sort of the lowest of our middle of the road decks, but it does a lot for its sensei effect. The 8 has felt like a perfectly fine number. Marba actually went through a number of tweaked number slots, getting to kind of the sweet spot, and I think 8 is a really healthy number. It's still enough cards to have some play in there. It's still enough to fit a couple of sets of a card and then still have a You're Invited or whatever, and not be really hurting for space. You can't get super techie, but still you have plenty of room. I really enjoyed the Sensei. I think of the 4, this is the one that I think was the if you're not so like Nick said, with Pansy Sensei being the kind of free for all, this is just sort of good for everyone. I think Marba has been the most fun to build a deck to use. The manipulation and having that kind of access to that has felt really, really fun. All right, so now we get into the Dragon Balls. The Dragon Ball Daima has a new set of Dragon Balls. There are only 3 of them in the rules. It says you can only win by Dragon Ball victory if you have 7 matching Dragon Balls. So these ones do not have any kind of Dragon Ball victory potential. So, and because of it, we wanted there to be something else that these kind of did. We wanted to. So, if you're going to play a set of Dragon Balls that cannot win by Dragon Ball victory, they have to do something good enough to overcome uh, losing the win con that Dragon Balls normally get you. And some people just play like 1 or 2 Dragon Balls or whatever, and that's fine. These will work in the same kind of decks where you might play 1 or 2. But if you're going to play a couple of Dragon Balls, you might just be pushing to play the whole set and losing out on a whole potential win con because of it. These really have to have some like additional value. So we wanted them to focus on why would you want to have, we didn't want these to just be like a ball 7 situation where that's the only ball you have in your deck, or like just Earth Ball 3, where you're like, I'm an aggressive deck and I'm going to play this to draw 3 cards and hurt you more. We wanted these to be like, why would you want to play all 3 at the same time? So we tried to encourage that. So what you'll see here is discard up to 1 attached card in play, then reveal up to X cards from your Sensei deck, and then shuffle them into your life deck. Choose up to X cards in your discard pile and place them in your Sensei deck. X equals the number of Demon Realm Dragon Balls you control. So you can see the gimmick that these balls are going to have applied to that last sentence of this card here. These Dragon Balls do something, and they do more of it for each ball that you have. So if you are, it's just to encourage, having multiple of these in play and not running like just the one. Like this one, for example, if you play it and you just discard it up to an unattached card, I mean, that part's really, really good. Having like a Dragon Ball access to getting rid of exertion or red clap, or there's like a ton of those cards that are they're a lot more attached. I mean, we talked about tech support existing, right, and how fun that's been to like attach a ton of cards to stuff. So there's a lot more of the kind of attached card gimmick running around these days, and so having access to this to just discard 1, or even from this set, the black poisoning, you can get rid of that too. Then just revealing cards from your Sensei deck and switching them in, shuffling them into your deck, then taking cards of your discard pile, putting them into your deck. Even if you just play this 1 ball, you're going to do that with 1 card. Sometimes when you start the game and you Sensei out, 6 cards, you lose, 2 or 3 cards in that Sensei out where you're like, oh man, it sucks to have lost. I just Sensei'd out my time, or my stop all, or my third beef, or like there's all kinds of things you like could lose. So getting to put one of those back into your deck feels really, really good. Or sometimes you sort of like misjudge a deck, and you're like, maybe they're on an ally packet. Like sometimes, when you face Cell, like generally speaking, you should probably just put an ally hate against Cell. You should just probably assume that it's an ally, the Cell Junior version. But sometimes you don't. And you're like, I think that this one specifically is like more of the just Cell beat down kind of thing. And so maybe you didn't put in your Cell's presence or whatever. And then you see that turn 1, they like set down a thing. Ah, dang it. Okay, well, I know when I get the ball, I'm going to go ahead and put a Cell's presence into my deck. That's cool too, and especially because you don't have to do it at the beginning of the game. So you can play it like later on in the game, which means your deck size is smaller, which means like it's statistically easier to draw the card that you're like putting back into your deck. So that's something worth knowing too. And then if you had, ball 2 or ball 2 and 3 in play, you can do more than 1 card at a time. You can exponentially kind of stack how effective that is. That's been really, really cool. This ball, I think, is really fun and opens up some really cool doors and is a nice safety cushion for replacing some of the stuff you lost accidentally or misjudged on. I think it's what's the right word for this? Not like, I don't want to say a crutch. It is a nice the fix to like a wrong Sensei deck save here is really nice as like a low skill level thing. Like if you're like not particularly familiar with what you're facing or whatever, Having this ball in your deck might just mean that like later in the game you get to course correct, and that's awesome. Some like senseiing is a skill, right? And uh, it takes time to know when your opponent sets down a sensei, a mastery, and an MP to know like 90% sure, okay, the deck they're playing, it's going to have this thing, and I need to deal with that. Uh, there's a lot of decks, and you got to learn all those things. Sometimes you face a deck you've never seen. Sometimes you face a deck where you don't think it's going to be that like version of it or whatever. Um, there's a like maybe you get something wrong. Like uh, we have a dude in the league, Anthony, right? He plays an Android 19 deck, and it like camps level 1, builds up the drills and stuff, and then it's just like beats you down with the level 1. But a lot of people when they play Orange 19, they play like rush to 3 and use his like super strong level 3. And so maybe you see his Orange 19 deck at the table and you're like, ooh, he's going to 3, okay. And when you start playing, you're like, oh god, it's a level 1 camp deck. I got to go get a Freeze's Deception into my deck. Uh, that kind of access is a really nice thing to have, and it's been really cool to use in testing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think Derek covered most of the angles with this ball. Notably, this can also put things that can't be sensate in, like our Spirit Bomb, into your deck. Um, that's been kind of one of the things I've tried to do with it. It's super, super interesting. The big one, though, is the discard the attached card. There is literal very few cards that answer attached cards in this game, and we just continue to add new attached cards to help out some of the weak masteries, weak personalities, things like that. So having an answer for that kind of stuff is very valuable. Notably, this can also discard things attached like terrible. Severe bruises and stuff like that that stop you from getting anger. Like, there's a lot of versatility in what these balls can do.
Sand
And
inspection.
Yep, yep. And the concept you'll see from the balls getting better based on how many Demon Realm balls you control just means that they're also like not as beneficial to capture as some other balls. I've seen plenty of people lose games because they got Earth Ball 3 or Earth Ball 5 captured, and then their opponent drew a bunch of cards and beat their face in. This is rarely going to happen with you with these balls. So that's another value that they have, is that you don't have to protect these balls quite so much, because if they get stolen, okay, no, not that big a deal, not that big a deal. Whereas you have the potential to get 2 or 3 bonuses off of them, your opponent's probably only getting one. So um, I do think Derek summed up ball one pretty well. So move on.
Well, then tell us about ball 2.
Okay, so Ball 2 has a parenthetical that says this card's title is considered to be the title of every Dragon Ball for card effects. We'll get into that shortly. You may raise any personality and play to its highest power stage. Choose 2 cards in your discard pile for every Demon Realm ball you control and shuffle them into your life deck. So let's talk about that first. Raise any personality and play to its highest power stage. I've always found this effect to be better than most people think it is. The problem is this is not good enough to be a card, so it really needs to be on something else that also has an effect, which makes it really good in this spot. Powering up one of your allies is very beneficial. If you're an MPPV or if you're a energy deck, powering up your MP could be very beneficial. If your opponent's an ally deck, powering up their MP could be very beneficial. There's a lot of ways you can get value out of that. It tends to feel better in actual games than it reads most of the time. Choose cards in your discard pile for every demon or ball you control and shuffle them into your life deck. One of the things I like to do with effects like this are shuffle in cards that shuffle in cards. So we've been making jokes recently in the league about the cookie cycling and things like that. This is very good at doing stuff like that. Once a expectant trunks or a fatherly advice hits your discard pile, if you're not on blue with blue negation, you probably don't really have a way to get that back into play. So what this can do is just, oh, you've used your good non-combats, or they were taking this damage, and it's like, okay, well, I'll play this ball, I'll shuffle the 2 of them back in. Um, that effect is really strong. Being specific that you get to pick which ones is very strong. If this was just shuffle the top 2 cards for each, then this ball would be by far the weakest of the bunch. But the fact that you get to choose the balls gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of way that you can get the cards that are good, that can't do you any value from your discard pile back into your life deck. Cards like I said, cards like the non-combats and various things like that. So last thing I want to talk about is the parenthetical. Most people probably read that parenthetical and they think of Blue Trap Strike. It's one of the most popular variants of that card. But there's actually a lot of cards that care about that. I believe it's the Bobbity Saga, where there's just a lot of generic blocks that say if you have, this random ball or this random ball in play, you get an effect. So, this, if you're already playing this ball, this could open up what you want to play block wise. This could open up some your deck to other like cards from sets like Bobbity and things like that. So I'm not saying that like you should play this in order to get those effects. If you're on Trap Strike, it's an option, I guess. But basically, I want to look at decks where I'm already playing the Demon Realm balls and say, okay, well, I'm playing this orange deck that already has the Demon Realm balls. Are there any orange cards from Bobbity Saga that I would want to include in my deck that get value if this ball is in play? And there's some cards, so it's at least something to consider. It's going to open up deck building a little bit. You're going to get to be a little more creative. There's a couple other cards too. There's a Garlic Junior Energy Attack that it's like energy attack, and if you have whatever ball in play, it's unstoppable. Well, this will just make it unstoppable. So maybe that card is now, it's not quite Krillin Seat Seeking Blast, but it's doing a good impersonation. So there's a lot of things you can get value from that with. I do think that that's a little bit more tacked on. I like the card for what it is on its base, which, like I
Mhm.
said, powering up a personality to full is valuable, and it feels so much better in game most of the time than it feels any other time. And then the specific, you get to choose the 2 cards for each ball, is going to be super good for you. You're going to get the cards you really need back in, and the cards you don't need, they're just going to stay over in your discard pile out of your way.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think you made a great point with it being a little bit tacked on. Um, and I think that's true. And it like is how it happened too. This card had like its power. And then as we were like working on it, we're like, what if it also was just every ball? So it like also turned on all those cards. And you're like, like that's probably just sort of free to add. Like I don't think playing this ball too over any of the balls that it's like specifically naming um makes the any deck that would need those like wildly better or anything. Like having this in Trap Strike where it requires this ball that it does, but now you just have this one instead of that one. Like that doesn't make the deck like wildly better or worse. So it just sort of is like free real estate to put it on the card. And in for something that has like such a low impact cost, it also has like a pretty high yield of like Nick said with Bobby Saga, Boo Saga cards that care about those specific balls. You can just kind of weasel those into decks a little bit more effectively than you might have previously. One thing I want to mention about this though is it gives it the title of the card. So like this Demon Realm Ball 2 is titled Dende Dragon Ball 5. It is not, however, a Dende Dragon Ball or like a Namek Dragon Ball. So you can't play like Goku's Dragon Ball Quest to go get this because it's not a Dende Dragon Ball. Um, it works specifically for when like card effects name a ball, not like a type of ball. So just keep that in mind when you're building that you don't like try to use Power of Purunga or something to go get a Namek ball and like grab this. That isn't going to work. That's not what it does. It just specifically works for like when a card is looking for the title of a card. Otherwise, though, I think Nick nailed like everything this card's cool for. Hitting 2 cards in your discard pile, even if it's just like 2 more blocks because you've like milled through all of your energy blocks or something. Like that's very handy, and it could be 2, 4, or 6 at a time. So it really piles up quick in how effective it is. I think this ball is awesome. All right, so then we have ball 3. Draw X cards. Hey, look, it's a ball 3. It draws cards. It's crazy. Draw X cards. Remove X cards in your opponent's discard pile from the game. More of that. We love that. X equals the amount of Demon Realm balls you control, because, of course, that's what it does. And then at the beginning of your turn, if X equals 3, so if you have all 3 Demon Realm balls in play, you can shuffle in all of the Demon Realm Dragon balls into their owner's life deck. So even if you've like captured your opponent's Demon Realm ball or whatever, you can shuffle them back into their deck. To advance or lower your MP 1 level, and you do not discard your drills in play in doing so. So you don't lose any of the work you set up, but you still get to see a different level. We added kind of this like payoff make a wish thing to this ball 3 as something to really incentivize all 3 of the balls. And in the show, they're all kids. They use the balls to get wished back into adults. so it levels you up into you're getting big. Um, this ball is really really cool too. The drawing cards balls are always fun to play, but now having also removed some balls in your opponent's discard pile effects stacked on it too is, I mean, we can't speak enough about how like good that is to have. There's this many cards that we've read, and every one of these videos we have like more of these, or we're like, yeah, man, look at these cards that hate discard pile. We like keep making more of them, and it still continues to be incredibly strong. To like the discard pile still remains as strong as it is, even with as many cards as every one of these videos we tell you, like, hey, look, another discard pile hate card. It's still that good. So um, it's nice to have more of these. The wish is cool. I will say that the toughest part with um there are some decks that won't take advantage of that, right? Like if you're a deck that like really is just going to camp level 1 and build up all your drills and whatever, even though you don't lose your drills, your deck is probably not intentionally going to level 2. Like that's probably not the thing it wants to do. Like you're not going to play, I don't know, like Roshi or something and level to 2, right? You would never do that. So there are times where you wouldn't necessarily do that, but you also don't have to do this. At the beginning of your turn, you may shuffle them in, so you don't have to do it. And then you can also lower too. So if you've got a deck that really hates getting leveled off of something, Nick's got a Jace deck that gets to level 3 and cries real hard. So like if he gets pushed to level 3, he can wish down to 2 and still be okay. Like it's an elongated way to pull off the like effect that Supreme Kai's key push might have or something like that, but it's a little bit safer way and it's not an attack and it's a little more prolonged. You don't have to draw it like exactly the right moment. You kind of can set it up. So there's like merit to both of those, but most of the time this card's going to end up being the draw ball that targets some discard pile. But maybe if you played all three, you can get a level out of it if you build a deck around doing so. The fact that it's only 3 balls means that it's easy enough to get all 3 of them into play to kind of repeat this. So you can do, a level or 2 off of this over the course of a game if you like set up enough ball searchers and like a deck that wants to do that, which ends up being really interesting to play. But overall, I think this ball's cool. It is not my like favorite of the 3 balls, but I think the wish payoff is pretty cool.
Yeah, so this is the draw ball, obviously, so it's the ball that's going to get stolen the most often. The good thing about this ball is that when they steal it, they're going to draw 1 card and remove 1 card, and that's not going to feel very good. What this will encourage your opponent to just not take your balls most of the time, especially if they steal it and draw 1 card and you steal it back and draw 2 or 3 cards. So I just think that that's a really interesting way it shakes out. I think that the wish effect of this card is going to encourage the decks that would normally play things like Supreme Cast Key Push to really consider playing the Demon Realm balls. Um, the deck that I've been testing them the most in is the our Spirit Bomb deck because of Ball One's effect to put it into your deck. But the other thing that this can do is if you get all 3 out and somebody bumps you up off of your level 1, because those decks are always camp level 1 decks, you can get back down to level 1. And if you happen to have a random drill or 2 into play, you don't lose it, which is great. So there's a lot of effects here that I think are really good. I think that if you're playing a deck that does not need a specific ball type or anything like that. Like it's only 3 cards and it's almost free to add these cards to your deck, and they can give you a lot of value. Um, Another thing that I've liked a lot in testing is I think that there could be a Lord Slug deck with these 3 balls that focuses on getting those 3 balls out using Slug's level 1 power to go to level 2 and then using the Wish to go to level 3 because being level 3 Lord Slug is very good. The problem with Lord Slug has always been that the level 2 is really, really bad. So, there's a lot of cool things you can do with these cards. Note that I might have missed Derek saying this, but if you advance a level with this, you are still able to win by MPPV. So
Ooh, I didn't say that. Good catch.
this does not prevent you from winning by MPPV. So if you can somehow do this twice in the same game, you can gain 2 levels like that. I don't think that this is going to be like part of an MPPV deck as a win con, but I do think that if you're playing a 1 to 3 personality and a 1 to 3 mirror, maybe you have maybe you have Degasu Sensei or something, so where you can't lose by in PPV like that, but you can still win. You could actually wish twice and just level up and win. Um, so there's some oddball things here. I think that most of the time when you have these three, when you make the wish, you're going to be going down because you're going to be on decks that are your opponent's trying to level you and you're trying not to be leveled. But overall, I think the power level of these cards is like just good enough to where it should be. I think they all do something unique and cool, and they all don't hurt you that much when they're stolen. So, for me, I'm going to play these balls in a lot more decks decks that maybe I would have normally had one ball in or zero balls in, because I think that there's a lot of value in having the three of them together. Um, these are cards you don't really need to, you don't have to have searching engines for them. You can play ball searchers for them if you want, but it's not really going to be necessary. They all do a very specific thing. They're all very good at what they do. So these balls, I think, will make a big splash in the game. I'm hoping to see a lot more of these instead of just random Earth Ball 7s. But Earth Ball 7 is very strong. So we'll see what it looks like overall. But I'm real excited to see what you guys come up with the Demon Realm balls. Okay, so now we're moving to our locations and battlegrounds section. So this is a location. It is the Demon Realm, and it says personalities cannot use personality powers to perform attacks. So, I know there's going to be a lot of people asking questions about this, and why this is the direction we went. There's already World Tournament or whatever that stops allies, but World Tournament doesn't stop Cell from beating you down. It doesn't stop Boo from curb stomping you with Boo's huge powers in G and stuff like that. Um, I think that this location is going to go into a lot of defensive decks that don't have a battleground or location they love. Like if my deck searches a little bit or draws some cards and doesn't want Dismal but probably still play some drills, so it doesn't really want City either. You're kind of looking around at options, and a lot of times you're like, man, I just don't have good options. So I'm currently playing a Future Gohan deck as we're writing this, and Future Gohan he hates Dismal Future and he hates City and Turmoil, but there is no battleground or location that he's like, man, I really love this effect. Well, I present the Demon Realm. Future Gohan is a beatdown personality that does not have attacks on his level. This is a great location for him, and there's a lot of people that are going to be in this boat. When your powers are not attacks, and you don't you don't want City and Dismal in play, I think this is going to default to a lot of those people. It's a location, so it's searchable by Nimbus Cloud, so you can play it as a one of in various Nimbus Cloud decks that might play 3 or 4 locations as individual ones instead of that. Or you can also put this in your Sensei deck and bring it in against ally beat decks. You can bring it in against decks where their MP is like a lot of their damage. Things like Cell, things like Boo. The double attacking gold level 2 Boo that has a physical and an energy attack. This card would just shut it down. This is great against that. I really like this location. I think it's really strong. I think it's going to make a splash in the format because although it's not good in every deck, obviously, like the decks that it is really good in are decks that have long struggled to find the right battleground or location. So I'm really hoping
Mhm.
that this helps fix some of those problems.
Yeah. One MP that you didn't mention that I think is really fun that it works is this is a really cool location in Goku, which is fun that, Goku goes to the Demon Realm in Daima and he goes to the Demon Realm in the card game now. And like that's pretty neat because you're level 1 through 5, you're probably like Cell Saga, Cell Saga, Cell Saga, Daima, Buu Saga. Like that's like a pretty standard Goku stack, and none of those are attacks. So uh, this is a really cool location in a stack like that where you're like every level you have just doesn't do that. Nick made a great point with Future Gohan having 3 levels full of constant powers and stuff. There are a ton of MPs that do that, and that's it's exciting to have something where like it's that sort of one side, right? Like when you use a location of battleground, you really want it to be as built to be one-sided hosing as possible. And this one is it's like so obvious how it applies. You just can't. I just don't get to do attacks that personalities have. So like, oh, I'm a deck that doesn't have that. All right, that's a good spot for it. one thing I will say that's important to note about this is it is not worded like Gohan's kick or something like that, where they cannot use the power, they just cannot use the attack. So it's not like a do what you can thing or whatever. Like if they have physical attack for +4, uh, secondary, they can't like try to do it, not use the attack, and then like get the secondary. That's not how it works. The secondary is part of doing the attack. But there are cards like um, Godku, the Super Saiyan God Goku level 5, which is like energy attack or prevent all damage from an attack. It doesn't say you can't use like powers that perform attacks. Uh, it's you cannot attack with a power, but you can use that power to block. And there are some MPs that just have that kind of like modality to it, and this doesn't stop you from using those. It just stops you from using the like attack portion of things. So just keep that in mind when you're like scheming up decks to play with this. That it doesn't just tell you you straight up can't use the power. You just have to find ones that like could do something else also.
Yeah,
I think.
Frieza is another good example for that. His
Oh,
level
yep.
2, you know.
I think this location is awesome. I'm really excited about it. It was really fun to use in testing. It was fun to get it to where it like got to. Um, it originally started out as like personality powers can't be used, like just period, and that felt like way too good uh, because there was a ton of like constant powers that you would turn off or powers that aren't attacks, and like hitting all of that with one card felt like too much. But we knew like the gimmick of this card and the like sort of like lore flavor of it is that in the demon realm the air is like really thick and it's like hard to like move around, and so we wanted to like emulate some kind of thing that made it difficult for personalities to do stuff. And so that's why at first we were like, yeah, it's Piccolo the Trained, the location. And it was too much. But as we tweaked it out to like, what if it was just the attacks and you still got to do all the other things? And we're like, oh, that's still a really good way to capture the like, it's hard to move your fists around, but you can like think. So it was really fun to design, and I think it turned out awesome. I really, really like this card. So we had a location, so we got to have a battleground. This is Majin Goma's arena. Once per combat, during their attack or text phase, each player may have their main personality perform an energy attack. So this is a location that makes an energy attack. Specifically, your MP does it. So your MP has to pay the stages or whatever. What have you. It's not like this card like manifests some attack or whatever. But yeah, it's just a location that sits on the table, and every turn, both players can use it to throw an attack. Um, if you are, this is another one I think that fits into the kind of slot of like, if you didn't have one you sort of already liked, uh, it's good there. But some decks are just like aggressive enough that they want to just push. Like having one more attack is just super exciting. The some decks are like, I'm already going to hit you like 5 or 6 times. Now I can hit you like an extra seventh time. That's good. There are also decks that are like built around being energy beats decks that set up like mods with Oob's energy drill and that kind of thing, or energy empowerment drill, blah blah blah, where you're adding damage to your energy attacks. Or if you're doing even if it's something simple like you have blue key or blue intense key drill out and you got +3 PUR, and now your first attack has plus PU or like plus damage equal to your PR. You can throw this for like 4 plus that if that's like going to be your best attack. So it just gives you some like flexibility of thinking out when it's right to throw an extra attack. But if you're a deck that's built around buffing those up and you can make this like hit for actual meaningful damage, it's a really fun way to build oomph into a deck that still, like we mentioned with the last card, kind of one sides it, where if your opponent might be throwing it back for just 4 and you're hitting them for like 8 or 9 off of it or something, it's a lot different swing. So it's just a fun little puzzle to work with, and it's the first battleground in the game that like does an attack. So it's been fun to see in testing and in the game, and I'm curious to see how its implementation gets fully utilized.
Yeah, one thing Derek didn't mention is that I've actually liked this card a lot in decks that have masteries that have cost reduction modifiers. So, Orange Trunk
Mm.
Saga, Red Explosion, things like that. When you can make this cheaper and make all of your attacks cheaper, you can just afford to throw more attacks. One thing that energy decks have always struggled with is that, their attacks, although better as a one of, are worse in multiples than physical decks. Because physical decks can kind of get you to zero and stack damage and do that really well, whereas energy decks are just kind of energy for four, energy for four, energy for four. What this does is it enables you to play multiple extra energy attacks every combat. So this lets you, you can say you've got one energy attack left in hand, you can throw your last energy attack that's from this arena instead of from the one in your hand, and then you can keep that card for next turn. Also, if you're playing three of this as your battleground, maybe you can skimp on your number of attacks a little bit, have a little bit more blocks, play a little bit more defensively, and kind of lean in on this as more of a way to do damage. Because most of those masteries also have a way to scale damage. So, if you're on Orange Trunk Saga, and you got the stages, then you can make this do 5 life cards, or a lot of the energy masteries just add +1 life card. Black Trunk Saga, adds damage, things like that. So the masteries are going to be what indicate whether or not you want to play this most of the time, I think. Um, the Burst Saga mastery, I think that this would be a really good interaction with that, where your first energy is free. So this one can just be free, and you can use it as a feel out kind of card, so where you don't have to waste anything from your hand, or just having effects later on in the combat that can throw attacks. This is going to be real good against black. Black's real good about stripping your opponent's hand. So after your opponent, you throw the cards in your hand first, your opponent knocks out the last card or two in your hand, and you still get one more attack off at them. So if you've got some orange energy drills or oops energy drill or orange or drill, whatever. Things like that can modify you, like Derek said, on the table, then this will be really valuable. But the fact that you can throw this whenever you want, you can throw it first, you can throw it last. It's got a lot of versatility and a lot of value. Obviously, you're going to want to play this in a deck where you're going to get more value out of it than your opponent. But a lot of those energy decks just need some battleground or location to answer, and they've all defaulted to Lonely Canyon mostly. But honestly, if I'm playing a deck that all my energies already only cost one, I'm not sure I prefer Lonely Canyon over this. I think I like this better. Now, if I'm playing Orange Cell Saga and all my energies cost 2, or Red World Games, I'm probably going to go back to Lonely Canyon. But if my
Yeah.
mastery is modifying the amount of cost of attacks, I'm going to look more towards this as my battleground of choice. Okay, so now we are moving to our MP stacks. This is a 1 to 3 stack. This is the Tamagamis. This is a little bit unique of a stack because they're kind of not all exactly the same character, but they are so similar and so paired, that we are going to make them one stack. So this is Tamagami number 3. He is the level 1. He has a constant combat power that says players may not use Dragon Ball powers when capturing a Dragon Ball. His PUR is only 1, and his power is a physical attack for 6 stages. If successful, capture a Dragon Ball. Raise your anger 1 level. If you look at his power ratings, he is in B for the first stage. He goes up to C, and then he's actually in D for the top 4 stages, which are pretty good. So still in C at 5 above, very relevant for the D bracket rule, but up to D overall. So what are we doing here with Tamagami? Well, you'll be able to see pretty quickly that there's a trend amongst Tamagamis that when your players are capturing back and forth Dragon Balls, they're not going to be able to use their effects. That means that you can play Dragon Balls with no fear of your opponent taking them and getting value from them. That's what Tamagami does. So Tamagami creates an aggressive deck. I mean, again, he's in D, where you can play physical beats or even energy beats if you want to, hyper beats, and play all the balls and just not worry about having to protect them so much. If your opponent steals your balls, you can steal them back with just his personality power, which is great. And it does give you a little bit of anger, so you can try to level up through the levels. Um, this level 1 has been fairly good in testing. Again, having a big power level, having a big flat physical, both very good. Capturing a Dragon Ball, even though you don't get to use his power, helps you keep your Dragon Balls in play. The entire point of the Tamagami stack, we've been talking for a while about having an aggressive personality that plays the balls, because most ball decks just, set back and don't really do anything and just kind of dirtle and try to beat you like that. Well, this deck can present a different avenue of attack. They're going to throw attacks at you. They're going to be a beatdown focus deck, and with that focus, they're also going to have the balls, so that if you're not paying attention, they can still absolutely ball victory you.
I'm going to go ahead and do like we have with the previous stacks, where I'll just move on to the next one, let you kind of cover the whole stack, and we'll kind of get into it from there.
Okay, so Tamagami number 2 is the level 2. Um, Again, the power level is pretty nice. He's in D at the bottom stage, which is pretty impressive, all the way up to E. So good power levels here. He has a 2 power up rating, so we're going up there. Same constant. Players may not use Dragon Balls from capturing a Dragon Ball. Power is a physical for +5. So again, +5 is a little better than 6 when you're in D and E most of the time. If successful capture a Dragon Ball, raise your anger 1. So this is more of the same. This guy is big. He's got a good power level. He's going to be doing lots of pat damage, which is great. So that's why I like to lean into more of a physical beats deck with him. Uh, Otherwise, he's basically the same as the level 1, where he's got a big physical. If successful capture Dragon Ball, raise your anger 1. Not a whole lot extra to say here. When we move into the level 3, we'll kind of sum up what we're looking at the stack overall. So level 3 is in a similar boat. He's in D at the bottom. He does go all the way to F at the very top, which is quite strong. His BUR is 3, going up one at a time. Now, the constants change here. This is the constant you want to be concerned with here. Your opponent may not use Dragon Ball powers when capturing a Dragon Ball. That means that if your opponent steals a ball from you, or if they play a ball and they get their effect at one time, they will not get that effect again. However, if you take that ball from them, you'll get the effect yourself. So that is an incredible power. It opens up a lot of volatility for your opponent. They got to be real careful about taking balls. They will not want to capture your balls, especially with Tamagami number one's power, which is physical +6. Again, very high power level, very good power. And then as a secondary, capture a Dragon Ball. So capturing a Dragon Ball as a secondary is incredibly strong, especially when you get to use its powers and your opponent doesn't. Tamagami does not have to worry a whole lot about protecting their Dragon Balls, because of this power and because of the ability to capture Dragon Balls back, and because your opponent gets no value from taking them. So when you look at this stack as a whole, what do you think about it? What do you want to do with it? Well, I'll tell you that in testing, um, we moved to a different direction with these guys, and they have one special ability we haven't mentioned yet. They are allowed to declare Namekian Tokugawa. Now, they cannot claim or play Namekian heritage only cards, but they are allowed to declare Namekian Tokugawa. Let's talk about what that means real quick. So, this is widely known as the PyCon rule, where Score let PyCon declare Namekian Tokugawa, even though he's not a Namekian because he's green or something. I don't know. But um, these guys were created by a Namekian. They are Neva's, handpicked or hand created personal things. So they are going to get to declare Namekian mastery using Namekian mastery. And the Namekian mastery that makes the most sense for them, in my opinion, is the Namekian dragon mastery. We've looked at dragon mastery for a long time about, man, it feels like there should be a deck here. Like, recycling Dragon Balls is such a strong power. We should be able to make this work. This works. These guys are great with the Dragon Mastery. They What they do is they enable you to play a set of balls, a full set of balls, without worrying about them getting captured. And then you can use both Dragon Mastery and some of the good Namekian cards to cycle the balls in and out, to draw more cards, or to, if you're, I used it against an MPPV deck in testing who was trying to level, to cycle Namek Ball 2 over and over into my deck to continuously lower your opponent personality level. The versatility and power that these guys provide with, protecting your balls the way they do, and protecting yourself from your opponent getting value from their ball, and then their ability to both capture balls back and shuffle balls in. This is, I don't want to give it the full, the triple win con kind of deck, but it absolutely can be. These guys can absolutely win by MPPV as a 1 to 3 personality. They can have all 7 balls in play and win like that. They can also just beat your face in, being in E and F and hitting you with big physicals. Namekian's really good at playing multiple physicals that draw a bunch of cards. Like, if you wanted to just be on World Games Mastery, Namekian World Games, and just draw a bunch of cards and just beat face, you could. And honestly, you could play these guys in just red. And I'm going to level up, and I'm going to play red, and I'm going to play some balls because they're free to play almost. And I'm going to throw big physicals at a high power level and gain some anger. And you can do a lot with these guys. They are great physical beats personalities. I've loved this stack. This is probably my favorite thing that we've got in this NZ set is the Tamagami stack. They've been amazing to play with. Uh, Guys, you should really give them a shot. This is also one of the stacks that I most like. I'm blanking. Degasu Sensei for, as they don't have a lot of anti-anger on their powers. So if your deck's not good at anti-anger, then that helps out there where you can prevent your opponent from 1 to 3 in you quickly with somebody like a Zarbon or an Oob or somebody that goes up real fast. But overall, I think these guys are great. I think that I think they're going to see a little splash in play. They give you such a unique way to play Dragon Balls that you never had before, and it's been an absolute blast to play.
Yeah, I think that last sentence there is the like really key takeaway for me is this Dragon Ball decks have been like a there's like sort of one way to do it right now, unless you're just sort of splashing the balls in and like maybe it's your second or third win con. This is like focused. I'm still trying to be a ball deck, but I don't want to play like that. I want to like play the game, and this just lets you do it in such a unique way. I think that uh, I'm curious to see how quickly these guys will like catch on. I think that they're awesome. I think they're really exciting to use. I think it's also really exciting to finally have like the good Dragon Mastery deck. But I personally am curious if like the league will catch on, like not catch on, but will gravitate the same way, or if it will be sort of the same way that Dragon Mastery is, where they're like, yeah, it sounds like there's probably something cool there, but whatever. I'm curious how that will actually go, but I really think that I think these guys like seem. I think these guys like are sort of obvious enough to just like be a little more enticing. I think Dragon Mastery is like it's very verbose, right? It's like kind of complex to figure out like how you'd build a deck to really take advantage of that. This Tamagami deck is like, oh, I'm just gonna play the balls and punch you, and if you take the ball, who cares? I'm gonna take it back for basically free and get to use it again. Uh, it's it's fun. It's exciting. It's this guy's an F. Like it's cool. It's a fun deck to play. It's really interesting and it's an exciting new thing that the this set adds. I think it's you know what I think it's probably my favorite MP stack in this set too. I was thinking maybe Arinsu, but I think Tamagami is just an like it's such a new way to play the game that I think it's really going to be exciting to see. All right, so that takes us to another card here. This one is sort of an ally, not a stack. We have Majin Ku, the smart one. Now, this is an ally that supports Dr. Arinsu, who we'll get to in a second. She is not specifically a Majin. I mean, don't come at me. Everyone here in the show is a Majin because that's what demons are in Dragon Ball. But um, in the like essence of the game, the way that like the Score Z card game kind of defines like Majins. She's not she isn't quite that. So she's just Dr. Arinsu, but she is allowed to play Majin Ku as well as do who we'll see next because she and Marba made them. They're like her henchmen, so she obviously gets to use them even though they're Majins. So Ku, being the ever helpful, smart henchman here, has a power that says raise a personality in play to its highest power stage. And then if Dr. Arinsu is your MP, you can use this at 5 above or less as opposed to just 1 above. So he's a little bit better if he's working alongside Arinsu, but just in general, he just raises the personality to its highest power stage. We talked about how cool of an effect that is on that ball too. It's good here too. It's kind of recurable because it's an ally power. Um, Overall, it's just sort of nice to have access to that. It seems a little bit like, just like Ball 2, it seems like a little underwhelming when you just read the sentence. But I really think people like undervalue how good like having power to full on a stick is. Even if it's just like to hit your opponent and like turn off a turn worth of ally damage, there's a ton of application for this. Power level wise, he's reasonably strong, B into C, but that was not like Dew's specialty. He's very smart. Also, he solves the big math problem in the show. So his power level, we kind of wanted a gap or a range, and then in doing so to kind of make it all fit, it ended up having this weird countdown of like 17 something thousand at a time or whatever. And so he gets these really strange gaps as you look down the level where the numbers are just a little weird, which is a good flavorful thing in the way that he helps figure out the 683 million and some change or whatever number that Do has to solve to get the Dragon Ball in the show. So it's just kind of a fun flavor thing there. But overall, the numbers don't really mean much other than he's in B and C because he's not particularly strong. But having access to a power to full is really helpful.
Yeah, so his cohort here, March Do, the other one, same effect. Dr. Rinsu can play as an ally. It's a physical for 10 flat stages. It costs 3 stages to perform, and if Rinsu is your MP, you can use this even if she's 5 above or less. So this one's kind of just the opposite, whereas Ku is the support ally, Do is the beatdown ally. So you'll notice Do goes all the way into F. Do is quite strong. He's a very good personality. He levels down fairly quickly, as he does in the show. He gets tired, and he levels all the way down. Um, Physical attack for 10 is a lot of damage, but costing 3 is a lot on an ally. Allies generally come in at 3 above, so, unless you have a way to fix this, you're not going to be doing this attack every turn. Now, that's why Ku exists, and that's why they play so well together, is because Ku can power up Do to enable you to throw this physical for 10 every single turn. Um, in Majin Ally decks, Babidi especially, these two have been great together, and they have been great overall. I really feel like this is going to put Majin Ally decks on the map with these two, and a couple other things that were created for this set. Um, the power level here is very nice. I mean, this is good if you're playing an ally deck and you just need to defend yourself. Arinzu, not a strong personality. A lot of the Majins you're going to play this kind of ally in are not strong personalities. They're in B most of the way. So having somebody that's in E and F and these high power levels, so if you're fighting against a Majin Buu or you're fighting against somebody else with a really high power level, they can help defend you a little bit.
Nick, are you gonna put this in Pui Pui?
Um, I don't know. It's very possible. I do like playing a couple of allies in Pui Pui. I have Evil Boo and the Vegeta that gains 2 anger against rogue personalities. This could be a
Mhm.
replacement. I actually, interestingly enough, think Ku will be the one I put into Pui Pui.
I
Um,
could see that too.
Powering
I was
up to
just
full
thinking
is
that,
very valuable in decks like that.
yeah, for sure. I was thinking about like, oh, if Pui Pui's gonna do like, have this like giant attack that you're sort of building up to, having one more like, also here's one for 10 too, maybe is like encouraging.
Could be.
But overall, I just think Do is really exciting. It's cool to have like 10 damage on a personality punch is like is really cool. Um, Now something that's unique too, right, is that it isn't pat damage. So like his giant power level doesn't matter a ton for like just doing this attack. So it is better for like redirecting and things. So then you have this like weird balance of like, do I redirect to Do because of his like big power level if he's high, but then it costs him stuff to use his attacks, so is that worth it? So there's just kind of this cool like balancing act you have to do with him because he drops power level so fast. Going all the way like F to D or F to B, sorry, in like a single level is a pretty wide swath. And Nick made a good point too. If you play this guy at 3, non-combat step goes to 4, or power step goes to 4, enter combat, he can throw this one time, and then next turn he goes from 1 to 2 and you still can't do it, so you got to wait a whole nother turn. So it's sort of like at every other turn you could do this, and then it's every 2 turns after that. So like unless you're doing something to juice him back up, you're not getting to do this very often, so you really got to make it stick. But I think he's been really fun in testing, and he's really I think he's a really cool character. It's neat to have captured the like flavor of him as well as we did. um, I I don't know. I think Do and Ku both are exciting, and I love that they play so well together. Okay, so here we have Dr. Arinsu. As we started talking about her a little bit before, she has a 1 through 4 here, so I'm going to go kind of quickly through each of the 4 of these. She, like the Tamagamis, have this sort of consistent effect that sort of improves just as you go. So her power here is when entering combat or when you reach this level, draw the bottom card of your discard pile. Then remove up to 1 card in your discard pile from the game. Uh, Dr. Rinsu, just a weak little science lady, so she's just in B. She's probably, she's got some magic and some like power, so she's not nothing, but she's not going to be um, fighting with the strongest people in the world by any means. So yeah, when you enter combat or reach it, draw a card, and then remove a card. So we see we've got a villain draw card personality, which doesn't like quite exist yet. We've got a couple that like tutor out a card or whatever, but just like your generic kind of Goku style draw card, they don't really have one of those. So she sort of fills that spot. We'll look at the level 2 quick here. So as you can see, just like the last one, when entering combat or when you reach this level, draw the bottom card of your discard pile, then remove up to 2. So we're starting to see that how that power like kind of ramps up. Then she adds some effect, which will continue through the rest of the cards. So when you have 10 or more cards and you remove from the game pile, your attacks do +1/+1. So now you start to see how, as she is like manipulating the discard pile into drawing, setting it up right so that she can draw the like best things she can. Also, she's filling my RFG intentionally to get some power buff to her, sort of weak B level stats. So as we go into the level 3, it now draws the bottom card of your discard pile, then removes 3 cards, and then if you have 15 or more, it does +2/+2. So this is starting to pile up. 15 is still, a reasonable amount, so you've really got to have like committed to this, but now you're starting to see where it goes. And then finally with the level 4, still doesn't get out of B. She's just in B forever. But 6 PUR on this level. When entering combat or when you reach this level, draw the bottom card of your discard pile, then remove up to 4. And if you have 20 or more, your attacks do +3/+3. So that starts adding up a lot. Now, one thing that's worth noting is that none of these levels do anything with like anger. So Arinsu doesn't handle the anger portion of leveling on her own. So if you're not doing the anger stuff, you've got this as your power. When entering combat, draw a card and then RFG a card from your discard pile. Or up to 1, I guess. So what that means is you are probably not playing a Camp 1 Dr. Arinsu deck. I suppose like maybe you're playing that just to like have a draw a card thing, but like you see some people who've played Goku Cells like a level 1 that's just like when entering combat draw a card, except he isn't just in B, right? So like there's a balance of when it's if it's really worth it to you to just have a personality who's level 1 just says draw a card, and if having someone in B is like worth that to you, the answer is probably not. So what you're going to do is you're going to be playing a deck that wants to get some anger or find some way to level. So we're looking at obviously stuff like red. She's super cool in various red decks. Really exciting. She's awesome in Orange Evolution because Orange Evolution puts cards into your discard pile and then you RFG them to level, which helps her with having cards in her own RFG pile. So that's been really fun to see. But as you keep going up through the stack and finding ways to get cards into your own RFG to get the damage buff, you find as you're sort of manipulating that discard pile that as you start ripping these cards out of the discard pile, you start having a lot of control over what ends up at the bottom. So if you sort of like plan your turns right, you can get it to where you're like looping the same card. And I've seen some turns where that gets kind of brutal, where if you set it up to just have like 1 or 2 cards in the discard pile every turn, you're just kind of like looping through the same one. You can really hit some strong strings of effects, and it's also up to 2, up to 3, up to 4. So you can pick 1 at a time or 0. So you don't have to hit something if there's only 1 card in there. And notably too, you also draw the card before you remove. So you aren't in a situation ever even where you like would just hit something and have to like you have to remove cards first and then have nothing to draw. You get to draw first and then you can choose what to remove. Overall, I think Arinsu is really, really interesting to play. I was saying in the review about the Tamagamis that I think Arinsu might be my favorite, but I think they're just because they introduce like such a new way to play. At the end of the day, Arinsu's thing is like not particularly new. It's still just like get a character to do a damage mod and have like draw cards. But the way that she is new and exciting is like that sort of like skill bubble of like moving your discard pile around in important ways to like reposition stuff into the right spot is really fun to do. It's we've talked about like floors and ceilings of cards a lot. I think Arinsu has a really reasonable floor because just like when enter combat, draw a card, cool. if you have cards in your RFG pile, which just sort of happens anyway, because some cards like RFG themselves, sometimes your opponent just like prep crashes you, whatever. You might just get some damage buff out of it. So like worst case scenario, you're maybe drawing a card and then doing some damage, even if you're doing like nothing interesting with the rest of her power. Like that's just okay. But the skill ceiling and the power ceiling of her, I think, is really high if you can build a deck and a skill set that's like taking full advantage of putting stuff in the right spot to be relevant, looping aerial forces over and over as you kind of like move them around, like just stuff like that. There's a ton of sort of combos like that that you can work out. Another thing that's fun is that she has when entering combat or when you reach this level. So you can kind of do this like unique thing where you like stack the effects of that up. So like if you're on level 2, you when enter combat, draw a card, and then you use Orange Evolution Mastery to level to 3, and then that's going to draw you a card because you reached the level. So like you can kind of stack these like if you line it up the right way, you can sort of stack to where you get to draw like 2 or 3 cards off of it. And those turns, if you can like line that up too, can like be really impactful. Overall, I think she's just really interesting to play and create some like really interesting kind of like galaxy brain turns where you gotta line it up just the right sequence. You gotta do your experiments just the right way to get like the perfect payoff. But she's so fun when it works out. Nick, you've played her a lot. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, Derek covered obviously all the main points. The one parallel I really like with her is that her and Goma are kind of opposites in every way. I think that Goma is very simplistic and very straightforward and easy to play. Derek, you kind of yeah, here we go. Um,
I know what
and
happened.
and Arinsu is very complex and she can be quite difficult to play, kind of the Galaxy Big Brain, and Goma's kind of the opposite, where he, does big thing, go boom, um, Arinsu being able to cycle the same card over and over has been her most powerful effect. Setting up, you mentioned Red Aerial Force, that's the best one, but something like Swivel Attack, Black Swivel Attack has also been pretty good. Um, is super powerful and it's very strong, and it just encourages, again, you have to have discard pile hate. If you don't have discard pile hate and you get this cycled on you 4 or 5 combats in a row, you're kind of getting what's coming to you. All right, play discard hate in your decks. um, she does need some help leveling. The Orange Evolution thing, like I played against one of the other playtesters, and he was able to use her when entering combat power 3 times in the same combat. You use it on level 1, you use the mastery to level up, and then you get it both when entering and when you reach the level. So three effects there. Um, the problem with that is that the deck doesn't really do a whole lot, so it kind of felt a little underpowered there. Where this has felt great mostly has been in red and in decks that gain anger anyway, so that you can just kind of naturally play this as you go. Um, this effect's been really strong. Her buffing herself as she goes up in levels is also very powerful. This is an MP I could see playing with them, with either Hybis or preferably with a mastery that raises your anger. So she plays a mastery that raises your anger, and then she can play Marba Sensei to fix her discard pile when she needs to, so that next combat she gets to draw what she wants to. There's a lot of value out of that. There's a lot of this is a little bit more of a complex stack. It's a little bit more big brained. Although at the end of the day, just drawing the bottom card of your discard pile every turn. I mean, people play Vegeta's Quickness Drill in most decks, so it's perfectly fine. I think her power level's pretty reasonable. I think you know she's going to be a good time to play. She's not quite draw a card when you're in combat, because there are times where you don't have a discard pile, but most of the time that's basically what she boils down to. And one other thing I'd like to mention with her is, I'm a big fan of Goku's Blinding Strike. If Goku's Blinding Strike is a card that you have interest in, she's a pretty good personality to play it with. If it's stopped, then it removes your discard pile from the game and it puts Goku's Blinding Strike on the bottom, so you can draw it again next combat. Just something worth thinking about.
That's a exciting thing to finally have some access to. We've talked a lot about about how we want there to be a good blinding strike deck,
Yep.
and it's cool to see her materialize that just a little bit.
Okay, so moving into Goma now. He is also a 1 to 4, and like I said, he's kind of the opposite of Arinzu, where she's kind of big brained and he's kind of, this is what I do. So his level 1 is in B. He's got a 1 PUR. He's got a constant that if Majin Goma is your MP, anytime you or your opponent gains anger via another effect, raise your anger 1. So obviously he's going to level very quickly. That's what he wants to do. Anytime you gain an anger, anytime your opponent gains an anger, you're going to gain another anger. His power is an energy attack. If he is your MP, that's all it does. It's an energy attack. Whatever, perfectly reasonable. If he is not your MP, it does +4 stages. So if this is a Majin ally in your deck, this is an energy for 4 and 4, which is pretty useful. It helps make Goma kind of a reasonable Majin ally, but on his MP, just an energy attack. It's a reasonable level 1 power. Hopefully, you're not on level 1 for too long.
Not very likely.
So then we move into level 2, Machigoma Scheming, still in BU the whole way, still with 1 power up rating. Again, you can probably get the guess here. He does not want to be here very long. So if Machigoma is your MP, anytime your opponent gain anger be another effect, raise your anger 1. So the same constant as level 1. But also, your opponent cannot add cards to their hand via card effects. So this is no masteries, this is no fatherlies, no expectance, no nothing like that. This level absolutely blanks all draw effects, all add cards effects that aren't the 3 cards you draw for your turn or for your defender defense phase. Again, with the constant the way it is, there's some value in trying to camp this level. You're not going to be able to. It's going to be really hard to both get to level 1 or get to level 2 from level 1 and stay there. Goma is about leveling. He's gonna gain some anger and he's gonna be immediately up to 3. This will help slow your opponent down while you get to 3. So when you get to 3, this is when Goma ramps it up a little bit. He is in E all the way, which E is obviously pretty good. You guys know him for playing Boo. There's the parenthetical is on this level, and it says if he's your MP, you cannot win by MPPV. Obviously, you should have been able to guess that from the level 1 and level 2 because he's going to get level up so incredibly fast. His PUR rating is 4, so that also gets a huge boost. His power, which we're going to go over first for reasons, is stops a physical or energy attack, raise your anger 2 levels. So, again, we're not done leveling with Goma. Now, Goma is not an MPPV personality. He is a personality that wants to be on level 4. At the end, his constant is at the end of combat. If you did not use your power, raise your anger 2. So, he's got an Omni block that raises your anger 2, and if for whatever reason you don't get to use that Omni block, you still get 2 anger at the end of combat. Again, he's getting bigger now, he's getting useful, but this is a guy that wants to be on level 4.
Let's get him there.
So is level 4, Majigoma Demon King. Now this power is incredibly high. He's an F at the bottom, all the way up through G at the top. This is Kid Buu levels of power. It's got a 5 PUR, which is quite good. The power is a focus physical for +5. Again, focus physical for +5 in F and G, pretty strong. At the end of combat, set Majin Goma's power level to full. This gets around sand beef. This gets around any effect that could stop you from powering up or whatever. You're just going to set it to full. So this also means that if you want to play like a hybrid deck with energy attacks, you're always going to have stages. You're never going to get stuck going into combat at 0. If successful, you may lower your opponent's MP 1 personality level, and your opponent may not use personality powers until the end of combat. So, what is Goma? He is an MP that wants to play a little bit of anger so that he can level up to 4, and then he is very good at both stopping your opponent from leveling and winning by MPPV and cutting off personality powers. Note that even if you lower your opponent a level and they're already at level 1, they still can't use their personality powers. One of the worst things about lowering opponent levels is that they get to then get access to their lower level personality power. Goma cutting all that off is very good. He's very good at just nuking your opponents too. If your opponent wants to level, if they say they got a really good level 2, a really good level 3, he can knock them down real quick. Say they're not trying to level, then he just turns off their personality power. We've seen from Piccolo the Trained how good that can be, and it is a focused attack, so it's a little bit harder to block. So, like I said, Goma and Arinsu are the opposites. Arinsu is a lot of pre-planning, a lot of working on, making sure your discard pile is set the way you want, making conscious efforts, conscious choices all the time. And Goma is, I'm going to get to level 4 and I'm going to punch your face in. And he's very, very good at it. I'm not going to say that he's just going to be a tough enough personality because I do believe that this level specifically is so good against MPBV that you could probably just play him in standard and feel good about it. You're going to make sure you need to have ways to answer ball decks, but power level in F and G that you're going to get to quite quickly, very very strong. Also, if you're playing him in standard, that level 2, it might be a little easier to camp against the ball deck. So maybe you draw a ball deck, they don't have any ways to raise anger. Maybe you're a little careful with yours, and you just stay here, and you stop your opponent from, from getting all the cards they need to stop you from beating them down. So there's a lot of value in this stack. There's a lot of versatility in this stack, but I mean, its goal is simple. We're going to vroom up to 4, and then we're going to punch your face in. And Goma's very good at it.
Yeah, I think the level 2, right? Nick, you brought it up a couple times at the beginning and now, where like this level is really strong. Your opponent not being able to add any cards to their hand, just super good. Dismal Future we already know is great, and that like just stops them at 4. This is like, nope, you just stopped it at whatever you're at. Um, really, really good. Some of your opponent's decks will just never gain anger. So, like, when you read this level just sort of like by itself, you're like, oh, I could just not gain any anger and then just camp this. But the thing that's tough is that if you don't gain any anger and your opponent doesn't gain any anger, you're just on this. And so you're just on energy attack, which is not great. So you have to build Goma in this way where like you need enough anger to be leveling just in case your opponent isn't. But if your opponent is also, Goma's going really fast. So it's like this weird, unique kind of um, balance to it when you're building the deck where you can't just rely on like, I'm going to just run 0 anger so I can like camp my 2 and then my opponent's just going to force me to my level 2 and I'll be fine. Like you can't do that because they just might not. And then you're just stuck on this. So you have to have enough ways to be leveling yourself to still get to 2, which will then inherently mean that you'll have more anger, which will level you to 3, and then from there you might as well go to 4, right? So like uh, it it's not a thing where you get to camp this very long. You might get a combat or 2 out of this, where you can slow them down a bunch from drawing cards, but don't. This isn't a thing that you should like plan around being on because it's just not going to happen. Um, a really funny thing that happens if you play a Goma mirror match and one of you gains an anger, you both just gain anger back and forth until you hit level 3. Like it just instantly, like the first time someone gains anger, you're both just level 3, which is like a really crazy thing to have happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really funny when it does. Overall, I think Goma's really cool because he plays in kind of everything. Like every deck can gain anger, and even if you're not like gaining anger, really, you like maybe could evolution him to like just run 0 anger orange and like get to the level 2 and maybe camp that. But even then, like your opponent could just get anger and level you off it. So it's just not something that's worth like trying to plan to stick to. Maybe you could do something with like a red unstable where you use the anger that you have to get yourself to 2 and then unstable or not unstable, sorry, explosion, and where you like pay your explosion anger to not level. Like maybe that's a thing you can do. But overall, the 2 isn't the like the point. It's just early in his like career, he's just kind of messing with what you do until he gets the evil eye, gets real big, and then just starts beating you up. And that's what the stack wants to do. That's the right way to build it. And it's just fun to see. It's like it's cool in black, it's cool in blue, it's cool in red, cool in it can be cool in orange. Although if you're doing orange, you probably need to be more of like a tough enough thing where you get some of the orange anger cards that exist. But overall, he's just kind of cool in like every color because like he's just a giant beat guy. Um, but like any of our stacks, like Herdigar and Tapion, whatever, you do need to have like it built into the early part of your deck to be getting off of this first couple of levels because they're not like pushing your win con. So just keep that in mind when building him. But I really do love how fun he's been to play, and I love the kind of dichotomy between Goma being the little dumb beat clown and Arinsu being like the smart evil scientist in the background doing her own like manipulation thing. I think that was a really cool thing to build into the set. Overall, I think Goma's super sweet. I think you should play him. All right, so we got Neva now. We talked about him earlier with being the creator of the Tamagamis, but he is just an ally here. He has a constant combat power that your Dragon Balls cannot be captured, so he's Goku's capturing drill as an ally. He doesn't need to be in control of combat to use this power. Awesome, so we can use it all the time. And then if your MP is Tamagami, this card gains resist. So now you have a Goku's capturing drill that has resist that isn't even a non-combat. So it's like another layer of removal they'd have to hit 2 times to clear off the table. So now as you put him into the Tamagami deck, you have not only balls that are not like fun to capture mechanically, they're also much tougher to do so. So it just amplifies the kind of like unique ball style of like a ball deck that's encouraged to be in combat, which would normally give your opponent like opportunity to take them, but Neva makes it very hard for them to do so. The cool thing about Neva is I don't know that he is like quite powerful enough to be like South Kai worthy, you know? Because even if your opponent does capture your ball or whatever as Tamagami in the early stage, they can't use it, and then you can just use your power to steal it back. So it's not like the end of the world if Nave is not there. So I don't know that you like South Kai him into play and then risk like such a low Sensei deck afterward. You could, and then you would just be safe kind of off rip. But and if South Kaiing and Neva was ever going to happen, it'd be in Tamagami. But I think he's just one of those allies that you just like draw like you would draw a Goku's capturing drill, and when you do, it's going to feel cool to have. Overall, I think this ally is awesome for the Tamagami, especially. But even just in every deck that would be like a ball deck or whatever, having a Goku's capturing drill that's a different card type means that your opponent now has to have a card that can hit an ally and can hit a non-combat card to get rid of both of them. Or even, if you stack 2 Goku's capturing drills, now you've got like 3 of them in play, technically, because of Neva. So it's he's just really exciting to use. He's a nice add for ball decks. I think most of the like existing kind of protect your Dragon Balls decks will love having this card. And then obviously the Tamagami will take huge advantage of him.
Yeah, I think he's going to see play in a lot of generic hero ball decks. Most of those decks don't play a ton of cards. They're short, short deck kind of builds. But I think he's better than like I'm seeing Chi-Chi in some of the Goku ally decks and things like that. I think he's better than Chi-Chi. One thing that's really important about Nave that Derek stressed was the card type. Um, you know, City and Turmoil is an absolute beater against ball decks, and City and Turmoil does not stop Neva. So if they city you and you have Neva out, then they still have to answer Neva before they can capture your Dragon Balls, which gives you more time and more avenues to get out of combat or to get City out of play or something like that to get you back in live in the game. I think that just as another avenue for protecting your Dragon Balls, that this is kind of an include in any Dragon Ball deck you're going to want to play. I also think that Piccolo Fuse is highly, highly underplayed, and this is just a
Also
Namekian
agree.
hero you can play in a hero Piccolo Fuse deck. So just a small ad there, but it is something.
Yeah, you could just use the Namekian absorption or whatever to eat Neva and to level up. You could use this to use Forbidden Fusion to level to Piccolo the Fuse. There's a bunch of ways you could like take really good advantage of this.
Okay, so the next ally we have up is you're gonna have to help me with the pronunciation of this, Derek.
The Gendarmerie.
The Gendarmerie. All right. So their power says that if your MP is a Majin, this card is considered Majin, and your deck may include up to 3 copies of this card. So energy attack, doing 2 stages of damage for each Majin personality in play. So obviously they're weak. They're in B. They got 1 power-up rating because they're allies. Whatever. None of that's relevant. If you're not Majin, you can have 1 copy of this card in play and it doesn't do anything. So you shouldn't do that. Um, if your MP is Majin, you get to play 3 copies of this card, so they have the redundancy effect, so you can put all 3 of them out at the same time. The battlefield can have 3 on each side if it needs to, from each opponent. So that's kind of a cool effect. Energy doing 2 stages for each Majin in play is a weird power. So yeah, I kind of thought that this was going to be way too weak in testing, but in practice, this is not that bad. The Majins need allies that perform attacks. And this turns into a pretty good attack a lot of the time. If you get it's easy to have 3 or so allies in play, counting your MP. Well, this is an energy for 8 stages. That does a good job of knocking people to 0. And if you got multiple copies on these, they kind of stack. If you've got the 3 of these in play with your Majin MP, then you're looking at 24 stages of damage from those 3 attacks. That's a lot better than energy for 4 over and over. So there's a lot of value that you can get out of these guys in the decks that want them. Now, right now, I think it's mainly just a Bobbity kind of build. I think that there's potential for other decks that could be like Majin Ally decks, but overall, when I've had these guys out, they've been impressive with their power, and they're Majin allies that do something useful, which we don't have a lot of. It gets real old trying to play Yakon and Spopovich and things like that in your ally decks. So being able to replace some of those terrible levels with guys that actually contribute to the game plan, like these guys, is very valuable. I think that the Majin Babidi deck is the Majin Babidi ally deck is going to be a thing now. I think it's always been too weak. I do not think it's too weak anymore, and I think these guys go a long way to make that work.
I think that's exactly right. Nick, you mentioned that it's not Majin off rip. It's like the Gendarmerie can go into anything, but then it's just an energy for 2 stages most of the time. Don't do that. It's bad. It's dumb. Don't do it. I guess if you were like really cheeky but also dumb, you could put this in like your Sensei deck to put into your deck if your opponent was Bobbity, and then maybe have like an energy for some stages, but just play a card that just does that without needing setup. It's like there are plenty of cards that's just an energy for 8 that you don't have to like fight to get to happen. But if so, don't do that. But if you're playing Bobbity, especially, it's cool there. Nick mentioned too with like earlier with like Pui Pui maybe having an ally or whatever. Maybe there's a situation where you have like that kind of deck built up with like a couple of other allies and Pui Pui and maybe this guy. So this hits for like an energy for 6 stages or 8 or whatever. Maybe that works. Most of the time though, this is Bobbity support. We wanted this set to so Daima is a show where they go to the Demon Realm and every single character they meet is a Majin, right? So we were like, this is a wildly missed opportunity if this set doesn't provide like Majin support. So we wanted to introduce it in like every way we could. The Majin B team we tried to use to help all of the weak guys. This plus the Do and Ku and even Goma level 1 helps out the Bobbity deck a lot, which I think pushes it into like very competitive territory. It just felt wrong to not include some love for the Majin decks in this set, and I think we did a good job of fitting that all in. All right, so here we've got Glorio Double Agent. Here's a hero ally. Now he is got a PUR of 3, which is a notable thing for an ally. 1, I suppose. Maybe if there's ever a Glorio 2 or 3, it's I guess a fine PUR for a level 1. But his power level isn't, or his attack would be sort of strange as an MP, although it kind of works. But it's a constant combat power. He can take control of combat and use this constant combat power even if your MP is not at 0 or 1 above 0. While he is in control of combat, you may discard a card from your hand to have Glorio perform an energy attack. Damage from your attacks cannot be prevented. So, anyone with keen eyes will realize that the text on this card is very familiar. This card is Hero Android 14. Android 14 is a super cool generic ally. Most decks that can like afford an ally these days run an Android 14. Just having the ability to turn a card in your hand that may be otherwise dead into an attack is very strong. Now, notably, Glorio's is an energy attack, so it will cost stages to perform. So you'll have to, keep that in mind when using him. But the payoff that you get for it too is that when Glorio is using his power, damage from your attacks can be prevented. So he has that over 14, where 14 has over Glorio that his attacks are free. So Glorio's balance there is that still getting to do a bunch of attacks, but having anytime he uses or he's in control of combat to perform an attack, that the damage isn't prevented is really good. And we talk all the time about Black Exertion being just great, right? Glorio can take control of combat whenever, And despite how like it doesn't quite read this on like the text of the card, just like Android 14, as you'll find like in the CRD, he can take control of combat whenever and doesn't have to just use this power. He just can take control of combat regardless. So he can just kind of all the time, you just like funnel your attacks through Glorio so that they are unpreventable. That's pretty good. While he's in play, he's essentially a black exertion that's just on all of your attacks. Pretty neat. But at the end of the day, he's just an ally. There's a ton of cards that kill an ally. He doesn't have any protection or anything. So you gotta, don't rely too heavily on it. It's a lot less safe than just a black exertion stuck to someone or whatever. But he will fit into all kinds of decks now. If you can fit him into every color, it doesn't just have to be a black card. So you kind of get black exertion in everything while he's in play. Overall, he's been really cool to use. I'm super excited to have him in the game. We've made a couple of jokes in the review of this set here where this like most current event that we're the main event 5 that we're currently playing was sort of hard for a couple of us here in the design and test team to build for because we wanted stuff from this set in our deck. Some of those were like senseis. One of those was Glorio. Giving Glorio to hero decks has just felt really, really fun. And I think he's going to see a ton of play. 14 is starting to like catch on here in the league as like a card that more and more people are just slapping into decks, and I think Glorio will start to do that too. Play Glorio, he's awesome.
One thing to note is even with his name as Glorio Double Agent, he is not a rogue. Glorio is a hero. He can only be played in hero decks. That is very much on purpose. Also, lore-wise, we don't really think that he was ever a villain in the show, really. So a couple of things that Derek covered most of it, but a couple of things I could also point out. He's in C all the way, which means that if you're an MP who's in B and you're just throwing physical attacks, you can throw those physical attacks with Glorio to get them at C instead of B. That's beneficial. Um, Also, like Derek said, any attacks that you funnel through Glorio have damage cannot be prevented on them. So, most of your attacks that you're not paying stages for, you're going to want to funnel through Glorio. Um,
Yep.
Glorio, I don't want to say he's like an upgraded version of 14. He's like separate but equal. Because 14's physical attacks they don't cost any stages to perform. So Glorio actually discarding the cards, you're probably not going to be able to do that a ton. Maybe once per combat you're going to get the value out of that, but a lot of his value is going to come from the damage can't be prevented effects. Um, Glorio is just like 14 in that people need to play it more in decks that don't really have a lot of allies. South Kai decks are the big one for me. If you're playing a South Kai deck and your South Kai is to get one ally, if you're on Turles and you have the Crusher Core in your deck or something like that, Future Gohan to get Future Trunks, you should play a second ally in those decks. And the second ally should be 14 Glorio. Like the value that you get from those guys just outweigh everything else, and you don't want to have a dead sensei. If you're paying the cost of having South Kai, which is having only 5 cards in your sensei deck, the last thing you want to do is draw 3 cards and start the game and draw your one ally, and then you have a dead sensei for the whole game. So having the second ally in the game in your deck in those decks especially is super important, and these are the ones you should choose: Glorio and 14. uh, I think that Glorio works in basically every shell that's going to play any number of allies. If you're going to have 3-4 allies, I think Glorio's a good fit. If you're going to have 15 allies, I think Glorio's a good fit. And if you're going to have one, I think you have two and Glorio's your second. So that's kind of my take on Glorio. I think that he should see a ton of play in hero decks. Um, like Derek said, the league has finally caught on to the power of 14, and part of that is people like me screaming to the rafters to play him more. But this is a card you're going to play in a half of hero decks, or I mean close to half of hero decks. As a it's a one of ally. It is what it is. It does a very specific and unique thing, but it's very good at it. And you're never going to feel bad having this card in play. It just gives you a lot of options.
Yeah, well, every one of us that's ever played a South Kai deck has done the. All right, I'm going to start the game. I'm going to go first. I'm going to go ahead and draw 3. Oh, I drew my ally. Fuck, like that sucks. So yeah, play 2 allies in your South Kai decks. Just do it. There's so like even if you didn't have Gloria before, like you just played Toribot, like
Mm-hmm.
just do it. Play a second ally. it's such an easy zero impact cost to not get absolutely cheesed by your uh, otherwise terrible sensei.
Hmm.
Okay, Piccolo the Dashing, level 4. That's exciting. Should be exciting already. This card could be blank, and it'd be mostly better than the Piccolo 4s that exist. So let's talk around this power first. So for PUR, Piccolo does a thing typically where he has like kind of a matching PUR to his level. So he kind of keeps the 4 that his other 4s have. You'll notice that his power stages are the same power levels that he has on Piccolo level 5, except Piccolo 5 has 12 stages. So this is the bottom 10 of that level, where that one gets 2 more on top of this. So it goes a little bit higher than this one, but you have basically the same power level, 2.9 into 3.8, solid, solid range. You go all the way, just barely cap E at the top. So what does he do? Physical attack doing +5 power stages of damage. If you declare to Tokuwaza, raise your MP to its highest power stage, then shuffle the top 4 cards of your discard pile into your life deck. If you're paying attention, you know that effect from somewhere. And that card, just like his name, is Namekian Dash. And that card is a really good Namekian card. Having that on your MP is really good. Piccolo needed a 4 really bad, and now has arguably the best Namekian card, like on a power. So it's just everything about this level is awesome. He's got a great power level, he's got a great PUR, he's got a really good reason to like hit a level 4 now. He doesn't have a bad spot to hit as you go up if you're leveling through anger. If you do the like farewell thing and then like key push to this or something, like you have like something you could do neat there. There's just a ton of ways that this is really welcome to have in a Piccolo deck. I shouldn't like I don't know if you know Namekian at all, especially playing like Namekian Piccolo, you should just kind of know how exciting it is for this to like finally exist. We've been talking for a while about there being a new Piccolo 4, and this was like a really good opportunity to do so. Finding a good power for him was a fun challenge too. And as we thought like about what he does and what it brings to the table, the uh, just giving him dash, like, we were like, it's perfect. It's like it's perfect. Just this card's awesome. I can't say there isn't even anything to say about it. It's just you're watching this. If you're watching this video, you're probably excited that this exists. That's just my presumption.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously in a Namekian deck, it fits the shell of what Namekian does in every single way. You know, raising you to full is something that's standard Namekian, shuffling cards back, standard Namekian. I mean, this this card's just great in a lot of ways. Uh, I actually, red has been the other style that Piccolo's been seeing a lot of play in, and I think this is just cleanly better than all the other red choices too. If you're playing an MPP red Piccolo deck, which has been floating around the league for quite some time, you know, when you get to level 4, that's usually when your deck is running a little thin. So powering up to full can negate some damage. Shuffling the top 4 card back can keep you alive there. Can keep you alive in the game. Um, I don't know that there's a single Piccolo deck that will not swap whatever 4 they're playing with this, as Piccolo's 4s are just bad. I'm not sure what happened with Score and just printing terrible level 4s, but they did a lot of that. A lot of the core personalities do not have good level 4s. So Piccolo's problem is solved. His other levels, I mean, you can argue how good the level 1 actually is now, but there's a couple of different choices. But the 2, the 3, and the 4, and of course the 5 are all very, very good personalities that do very good effects. So this is going to help a lot with Piccolo, and playing decks that get to level 4 and then the level 4 does nothing can be very brutal, especially because the game's real tight when you're at level 4, and you really need to make sure that you can have enough staying power to either cross the finish line to get to level 5 to win by MPPV, or if you're on some sort of leveling strategy like Namekian that maybe can't win by MPPV, then this keeps you alive, it keeps you going. It's a big attack. Notably powering up to full puts you in E, so +5 in E is pretty good. um, it's a fun power. If you're playing Piccolo, this is going to be your level 4 now. If maybe you haven't, you've chosen not to play Piccolo because I don't like leveling stack where some of the cards are terrible. I totally get that. That's why I don't play leveling Vegeta very often because the 4 is kind of rough. But now Piccolo's 4 is fixed, and yeah, this feels great.
We have in this set in the show that our heroes get like wished into being kids. Towards the end of the show, Glorio, double agent here, who acts like he's working with Arinsu the whole time, realizes that our heroes are all pretty cool dudes and wishes that Peruka makes them all adults again. So each of the cool new like guys that got made got a alt art matching level to let you pick if you want to represent the like adult characters in your deck, or if you like the sort of turned into kids vibe. I know there are like some people that exist who like were sort of turned off to the Daima concept overall, like because oh it's like GT again or whatever. They like got made into babies. Like who cares, you know? So like if that's your case, like you can play adult Piccolo. That's fine. Um, it's up to you. We thought it would be fun to have some alt art characters there, and here's your Piccolo alt art. So, speaking of getting made into babies, we got Goku Super Saiyan 4 here. Super Saiyan 4 is canon now. That's exciting. So, this is a level 4, because, just like we said before, the Goku 4s also aren't very good.
Mhm.
Or at least aren't uh, are narrow. If they're better than not good, they're at least very narrow. And this one is your not narrow level 4. So solid power level 7-2 up to 9. Huge 4 PUR. Fine. Power when entering combat, draw a card. Cool. You like to have when entering combat, draw cards on Goku. Fits right in with what he does. And then power, use one of your lower level personality powers. So, what we wanted with this for was I really wanted to capture a way to kind of bridge the like gap between the Cell Saga High Tech 3, which is like normally where you end up in a Goku deck, and the Buu Saga SS3. And this I think does that pretty well. It sort of emulates getting to the 3. You get to use 2 powers there. This lets you use 1. It emulates the 1, 2, and 3 with the drawing a card when entering. So now you have this thing with like you go to this level and you draw a card. You when entering combat. Then you use the other power to use one of your lower level powers. You can use your Goku level 1 to draw a second card. You can use the power from your Goku level 3 to do the reveal a card thing. You can do the level 2 as a power during combat now to, draw the card that way. So that all works nice there. And then when you get to level 5, you can use the level 5 power to pick this one and say you're like level 1. Cool. So you can draw both cards off of that, and then you can use this to pick your level 3. And so now you can kind of stack those levels up and get this kind of big, like Voltron-y Goku power. And it's just very fun to use. It's not like a flashy effect, like when you read it, you're like, oh, draw a card and like use a power. It's not like reinventing the wheel or anything, but it fits so good into that existing stack of Cell Saga, High Tech Cell Saga, this Buu Saga SS3. It like makes like such a cohesive little rainbow of a character there. It's been so cool to have access to this. I think leveling up a Goku deck into this feels great. I think doing the Goku's farewell into the SS3 to pick this and something else is even better than it was before. I just think it's a cool way to unify the Goku stack as well as even making the most expensive retail card in this game also even more playable. So I think this card's a very welcome addition to the Goku repertoire of levels.
Yeah, so one thing I kind of misheard I think what you said, but the important thing to note with the second power here is that it can't hit when entering combat powers because it's an activated power. So when entering combat,
You're right.
you'll draw a card. But so what this does, like Derek said, with the Cell Saga stack that generally sees play, is that you'll when entering combat draw a card, and then you'll choose your level 2 power to draw the bottom card of your discard pile. That's what most people do with it. That's what it was done a lot in testing. We did try some other things. There's some interesting Goku levels that really don't see play that you could try. The Cell Saga level 3 regular Goku is like physical +3/+3, or physical for 3 life, 3 stages, something like that. So that's an option, especially when you're at 9 million. And there's some other Goku stuff too. Like if you really get around and start digging around, there's a lot of Goku levels that you could try with this. It's got a lot of flexibility. It could encourage you to build a different kind of Goku stack, but it could also just fit directly into the standard Cell Saga Goku stack. Derek kind of covered all the bases with the level 5 and how good all that is and all the various things from that. So, really, this is just the same thing as Piccolo. This is a clean replacement to a level 4 that was in desperate need of a clean replacement. The getting 5 drills level 4, obviously, in the decks that want that, it's going to be great. But basically, every other deck, you're like, all right, do I play this card that maybe makes my attacks do a little bit more? Like, ugh, this is not great. So this fixes that. This is a great power. This is a great Goku. You're going to play this over every other level 4 Goku in almost every single deck other than the one that cares about the drills. So it's been great. It's been fun. We've been working on some like sand leveling type decks that get here and like it too. So there's a lot you can experiment with this card, but it always feels good.
Yeah, like Hybis Saiyan Moot Buu Saga
Hmm.
is a really fun thing to like rush through stages or levels to get to this. Is really cool. Like there's just really interesting stuff to do with it. I'm glad that you brought it up the way you did. Thanks for catching my overspeak on the power there. It didn't used to be. At one point it was like a you could just kind of like hit those constants too. But you're right. It does not do that. It's got to be specifically a power, and you got to use this in combat because it's not a wet entering. All right, so we have like the Piccolo alt art. There's a Goku adult alt art as well. If you're not feeling the kid vibe, personally, I think the kid level looks a little better, but I think this one is also pretty clean looking art. If that is your vibe. Finally, then we've got Vegeta Super Saiyan 3. He is, funnily enough, with Goku being Super Saiyan 4 at level 4, that's funny too, because it's Super Saiyan 4 level 4. Vegeta Super Saiyan 3 being a higher level than Goku Super Saiyan 4, well, whatever. But Vegeta Super Saiyan 3 mirrors the Goku Super Saiyan 3 level 5. So that's what we got. So, power up rating of 6, constant combat power, twice per combat. When you perform an attack from your hand, you may choose to have it remain in play to be used an additional time this combat. Attacks you perform that remain in play are placed at the bottom of your life deck after use instead of discarded or removed from the game. So we wanted to kind of capture the like do something twice thing that the Super Saiyan 3 forms in this game have, the Goku picking 2 powers, the Gotenks doing an attack twice. We wanted Vegeta to have some kind of like do a thing 2 times thing also. And then Vegeta, as everyone knows, is all about spamming his attacks. He's a beam spam nerd, big furious attacker. So setting an attack down and saying, this is one I want to stay and play to be used a second time. You can do so much with that. Note specifically, it does say when you do an attack from your hand. So you can't like play an attack. Like I can't play Saiyan Beef and then choose to have it stay on the table and then Beef and then choose that to be on the table again. It has to be when I did it from my hand. So you can't get like 3 uses out of the same card. But having something with really strong secondaries that you can stack, having something with really good if successfuls that you can get 2 times or even 1 time if they block the first one or whatever. There's a lot of interesting things you can do with that. And then getting to put any of those remained cards back at the bottom of your deck instead of losing them just helps keep Vegeta in the fight to keep spamming those attacks even more. Notably, this effect is a constant combat power. So what we ended up finding happens most often with this Vegeta. Uh, I'll start a little bit from the top. So Vegeta, this power is really cool. It isn't necessarily cool enough to like warrant the risk of like a Goku's farewell to get here and like try to pull that off. Um, you could, and you might still win, but it's not. It isn't quite worth it that way. And we're like, okay, well then instead let's just like level to it. So we were like trying the Hibis, and just like the Goku, we tried like the Hibis, Saiyan Buu Saga, rush through this. We tried unstable to like get there really fast. We tried just various different ways, and we were finding that like trying to rush to this level to like use it didn't feel like quite enough of a payoff. But what does feel really cool is using unlocked potential with this card because it's a constant combat power. So what you can do with your Vegeta deck now is you can like get to a good sort of like stopping point. You can like level up through something and then use unlocked potential to use this power for the rest of combat to then stack the rest of your attacks. So that ends up making like a really interesting deck to play where you can kind of fine tune which level you're trying to get to and then still get to use this. That's really cool. Funny thing about this power level wise, on his stages, you'll notice it's 5'9", 6'6". Fine, whatever, that's F. But it is specifically one power stage, like his highest power level is Super Saiyan 3 Goku's 9th power level. So he's just a little bit weaker than Goku. So that's a funny little flavor add, but really keeps the power level like in the same kind of bracket that the Super Saiyan 3 Goku level is in. So that's cool there. But overall, this power is really fun to use, and especially with unlocked potential, it's the like combos and stuff you can string together with that are really neat. Vegeta has some really cool, even just like through named stuff, like Vegeta's Big Bang Attack. To use Vegeta's Big Bang Attack to go search your deck for another card to put in your hand, which you could then make stay on the table again too. Then Vegeta's Big Bang stays on the table. You then use it again to go get another card, and then put it in your deck and like rinse repeat. You can set some like really ridiculous stuff up with this Vegeta that's really, really fun to do. I think he's going to be a super exciting add to Vegeta decks. Vegeta decks are already, pushing into more popular territory. The addition of Bad Man into the game has like really blown up how cool Vegeta is. And then champion card designed Tim's Vegeta Big Bang Attack was a huge add to Vegeta too. So between those two cards and this, you're going to have a blast doing whatever version of Vegeta you're trying to build.
Yeah, I actually think that this is going to lead into some wonky MPPV shells with unlocked potential using this power to perform a red overbearing attack and red axial kick and some of those cards multiple times, which is really cool. Also, another thing is this like getting to settle down and then making your unlocked potential be unspearable and negatable, and then using that power to also buff what you're doing because your attacks will do +2 life cards, plus you'll get to choose two to stay on the table. I don't think that this card is going to see a lot of play on its level. It's going to see a lot of its play through unlock potential, which is okay because it does create a really cool effect. I think that this will be the new level 5 for MPPV decks. It basically, if you don't have a specific reason to be on God, you're going to play this instead. Vegeta the Revitalized, although everybody, it's a chase card and people want it. It kind of just sucks and it's kind of boring and
Yep.
it's kind of uninspiring for why to play Vegeta. This is more down the alley of why you should be playing Vegeta. I mean, look, you could play. We've tested it in like Saiyan MBS where you just rush up to level 5. It doesn't feel quite as strong as some other powers do when you do that. Although that mastery itself is a little weak, and that's kind of what the problem is. But just a generic Saiyan deck where you're playing Cell Saga Mastery and you're drawing 6 cards, and then you might jam unlock potential in there to unlock potential and get to use, Saiyan Cross Punch twice, hit them for 20 stages. So there's a lot of value you can get out of this. I think its place in the meta is obviously pretty straightforward and direct. If you're playing a Vegeta deck and you're not worried about going to God, you're going to play this Vegeta. You're going to probably pair it with unlock potential every time because it's incredibly good combo. And yeah, I mean it's a good time, man. It's a blast. Anything that helps Vegeta is something that's going to be welcome in the league for sure.
Yep. And I think another thing you can do is you can play the Goku Desperate Plea ally with your Vegeta stack. as sort of like a fourth copy of Unlocked Potential, because you can then fuse into Gogeta, who essentially has like this same power. So you can just sort of like kind of maximize the way you do that if you want to build into that angle. But overall, I just think this level is super fun. And then because the other two have alt arts, so does this one. This one's got his adult form and mirrors the pose of the original Super Saiyan 3 Goku a lot more. So you got a good kind of throwback there. Um, this one I think looks great. The kid looks great. Both these levels are really interesting. Overall, though, that's like that's all there really is to say about Vegeta. I think he's super cool. I think you should be playing this. And then we just have a little preview card. It's a little alt art promo of Goku Young again. Nothing really to talk about here. We've all seen Goku Young a million times. But it's so aptly named, it had to be made. Anyway, that's it. That's NZ8 Grand Adventure. Unlike the previous sets where we've had some time to see how it's impacted the meta and reflect on that, these videos have both been a little longer because there's a little bit more postulating and presumption. But I hope to see these make the kind of impact we're expecting. I'm curious to see if there will be anything that surprises us, anything that you guys come up with that we just like didn't think about, or even stuff that maybe we're thinking like was great and you guys just don't find interesting. That kind of thing's exciting for me to see when the sets finally release. In the case of this video, it should probably be the same day as the set, so you guys are probably looking at cards as well. I'm just curious to see what you come up with. It's always the most exciting part of making these sets, is wondering what you guys are going to do with them.
Absolutely.
So if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Thanks for enjoying this kind of version of a set review, and we'll do another one of these in 6 months when set 9 happens.
See you guys then.